Hello, everyone. Welcome to Your American Experiment with Dr. Greg Brannon. It's always good to see all of you, and we appreciate you tuning in. It's brought to you by the Youth Institute and Metagenics. Dr. Brannon, always good to see you.
And with Bill LeMay. Don't forget that.
Yeah,
okay,
I'm here too.
okay.
But, all right, so I tune on into the news because this is what I do, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard the words constitutional crisis, and it comes out of the mouths of Republicans. It comes out of the mouths of Democrats, most recently Nancy Pelosi.
She read the Constitution?
Well, that's my point,
okay.
Doctor. And I don't want to, listen, I don't think you can talk about the Constitution enough because nobody knows anything about it. But here we are. We have Washington, D.C. We have Republicans and Democrats alike who talk about the Constitution as though it were, in fact, the supreme law of the land and ignore it. Every day they're in Washington.
Right.
Wrong or right?
100% correct, Bill.
Can we get back to the basics here? I mean, I have some very basic questions for you, and I don't mean to bore you with these questions, but there is a large population that believes that the Constitution, written so long ago, is a living, breathing document. These men were so wise that they wrote a document that would automatically transcend time and evolve as we as a society changed.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think we should actually all admit right now that the Constitution is dead as a governing body, because if it is, then healthcare, education, foreign aid to countries, open borders would all be a moot point because they would not be here.
So you're saying the Constitution not dead in the respect that it versus living, breathing
right.
versus dead that we don't abide by.
We don't abide by it because, Bill, it is. See, the thing about it is it's a contract, and what happens, the contract is, we'll use the example, those of us who've been fortunate enough to buy a house or buy a car. We have a contract with the
Sure.
bank that's going to pay for you, and you can't change those agreements when you sign them. They're ironclad. That's exactly what the state representatives who went to Philadelphia Convention to mold this new Constitution. You know, I've already said multiple times, I think the Articles of Confederation is superior, but mold this new Constitution, then went back to the people that sent them to make the Constitution. They were the ones that ratified it, the peoples of the state. And they were promised that what it does is it binds the general government to do two certain functions only: free trade amongst the states and a common defense to protect
Right.
the states. See, when you look at the Constitution, that's all it says. But the progressive movement could not do that. They could not. The big centralization guys, I mean, Lincoln was one of the biggest ones who started this whole idea. But the idea of that the central government will replace the federal government's, the central federal government will replace the state's functions, but more importantly, replace authority. See, the Supreme Court is what they run to now. They'd much rather be able to change one man in a black robe or one woman in a black robe.
Easier to do.
Easier to do. So if you change, Washington said, let's change the Constitution via the Constitution. That is an Article 5 convention, which I'd be very dubious about, or an amendment process, which I would not be dubious about. But the problem is this, Bill, is our lack of. We have people running for office, conservative, progressive. I believe we've actually followed what John Adams warned about. He says we are the rule of law, not the rule of men. We're the rule of men. What does Obama say about X? What does Trump say about X? What does Bush say about Y? The president has 14 functions in Article 2. If he did those 14 functions, we would not discuss the budget with him. We would not discuss borders with him. Okay, these are congressional functions.
Right.
We would abortion in the Fifth Amendment. No life should be taken without due process. Just because 7 men in a black robe, by the way, 5 Republicans, said life does not begin at conception. Now we actually in life. Now the debate is not in the womb. Now the debate is, you know what? Let's make a decision after the baby's born.
Right.
This because we went down a slippery slope. So the thing is, we have to bind. Jefferson and Adam and Henry used the word chains. The Constitution chains government. He said, if we Jefferson was very clear. Our peculiar security is based upon this idea of what the Constitution stands for, but it's you and I holding each other accountable to it. So I'm.
But see, you just said something very, very important there. It's you and I.
Yes.
And the 330 million other Americans are responsible, right?
Yeah, we have this whole
But Ezra Klein, he's with Washington Post, I think, right? He wrote this. He said, the issue of the Constitution is not that people don't read the text, but he thinks the Constitution is that the text is confusing because it was written more than 100 years ago. So it's such an old document. And now with our public education, it's written in cursive too. But that's the explanation.
Okay, more than 100 years ago. Dude, it's 237 years ago. I mean, just that alone, the illiteracy on it. But again,
yes, but that's the point, isn't it?
But again, Bill, okay, Scripture's been written, 2,000 years ago. Yeah. The Old Testament, another 3,000 years ago.
That's an excellent point.
Okay,
yes.
Okay. So just because something's old doesn't make it bad or good, right? It's what it says inside there, right? But truths are truths, and Scripture is obviously ultimate truth. But when you look at this, Bill, this is what's important: is we wrote it on a piece of paper. Okay. All you geniuses out there, the Post. Can anybody quote me any article or any statement, any clause from the English Constitution?
I can't.
Okay. You know why? There's not one.
Oh.
The English Constitution was not written on a piece of paper. They did it when men's whims, judicial decisions. That's all it was.
That's all it was.
That's all it was.
That's where we are today.
The founders are just the opposite here. They said, what we're going to do is, in fact, they compare it, not that it's equal to Scripture, but compare it to that. We're going to write it down. We're going to hold ourselves accountable to this contract so that it's written down. And therefore, they wrote it in plain English just because it's written at the 22nd grade level, and today's average American reads the 4th grade level.
Right.
Okay, that doesn't make it less intelligible to read. Clauses and statements are there, and it's only 7 pages. So they make it seem like so complicated. It says Article 1 says the functions of Congress. There's 33. Article 2 has 14s for the executive. Article 3 has judicial, has 7 functions. That's it.
Simple.
And
then you got your Bill of Rights.
Your amendments. But the amendments
yes.
are just part of the Constitution that came afterwards. In fact, Madison wanted to incorporate the first 10 back into it, but Jefferson convinced him to be able to have like more of a final period, because the Bill of Rights, what makes it like a final exclamation point is in the introductory statement of the Bill of Rights, which does have no power. It just discussed like the preamble to the Constitution. We the people.
That's important, isn't it? That isn't often talked about. What is the preamble?
The preamble.
What does it say?
The preamble has zero legal power. It's just a summary of what the body of the Constitution says.
But the preamble is very important, isn't it?
Well, it actually messed up. It says, we the people of the United States. And Henry went nuts on this because Article 7 says each state had 1 vote to convince it. It was we the people of the states, not we the people as a national level. Okay? That divides a democracy away from a republic. All right. But the preamble actually declares what the two things are going to talk about. So in that, we're going to have a common defense and a general welfare. General welfare is not socialism and communism, which people use today. General welfare meant, because general welfare, that clause came out of Article 3 of the Articles of Confederation. It was a statement they already knew. It means if you raise a tax, specifically in Article 8, Article 1, Section 8, how you raise tax legally, not by income tax, by a tariff excise, that tax must be beneficial for all 13, not for one.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Makes sense.
That's it. That's why every bill had to pass unanimously. Each state had to say yes to it, or the bill would not pass.
Getting back to your opening statement, though, which I think is huge, I tend to agree with it, of course. If it's not dead, it is darn close to being dead, and that is the people of the United States no longer care about the Constitution. Certainly our elected officials do not.
The elected officials do not care because we don't care. When I ran for U.S. Senate.
But what does that mean for us?
That means
what does that mean for us?
Means,
without the Constitution, we're Venezuela. We're you see even the democracies. The people in Venezuela, they voted. It was a democracy, right? They voted for Hugo Chavez, who promised them free education, cheap gasoline. Sounds like the Democratic platform. And we see what's happening in Venezuela. That's what democracies are. And that's socialism or democracy and tyrannical governments. So are you saying that we are at a point where we could very well, I know the government is tyrannical in many respects, right? You would agree with that? Our government today.
The Fourth Amendment is spit on, Bill.
Yes, all right.
They literally have your bank account.
So what will our country look like, Doctor?
Okay, this is important. Okay, when I ran, I did not run as a conservative. I ran as a constitutional conservative. And I didn't want to put the word conservative in there because conservative actually means conserve the status quo. But I wanted people to understand that I'm running on the Constitution, not going back in the past. That's not what it talks about. But those principles are timeless. And that's why it's important to understand the Declaration of Independence declares what a legitimate government is. We repeat this every single week, Bill, because right now we have become the rule of men. That's what we've become. Crossing the aisle, as Tillis talked about, a compromise. You don't compromise on the law of gravity to fly a plane. You can't compromise on God's natural law.
There's no debate over a speed limit.
No. Even though I think there's, and that's
yes, I know. But the point is, the words are simple. They use dictionaries. It's very easy to comprehend. The reason it's difficult is to try to get around it.
That's Bill.
That's what's difficult, right? And they've succeeded.
And they succeeded because what they did was they have John Marshall's famous Madison Mayberry case in 1803 was the beginning of the highlight case that Hamilton actually argued in front of the Supreme Court in 1795 led this idea because what happened was this whole idea of these things not being, they're not written down, but we could still use them. It's implied, right? That whole idea. The word implied powers is nowhere in the debate, nowhere in the Constitution, but that's what Hamilton used to get the first central bank, the things he wanted to, right? So implied powers became this idea that, it doesn't say that, but between the lines. In fact, Jefferson said when it was told, Hamilton said it's between the lines. He goes, all I see between the lines is white paper.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So that's not what you want. You want to chain and bind them to these words. So our peculiar security is based on the fact that we have a written constitution. Let that sink in. Jefferson said our peculiar security is based on the fact that we have a written constitution because we could bind and chain them to those words. So what they did is they defined the definition of words differently. That's what happens.
Right.
When you do that, then you become the ruler of judges and men on their opinions. And that could waver and change. We had a disastrous thing called slavery where human beings made in the creator's image because the different melanin became property. And that was a unanimous Supreme Court decision in the Taney Court of 1857, the Alabama Booth case. What did Wisconsin say? No, Joshua Glover's a human being. So we're at that revolutionary time now that we have to stand up and say no. So right now, I don't care if it's President Trump, President Obama, President Bush, President anybody. The thing about it is, Bill, we have to chain that person. But Greg, Obama did all these unconstitutional executive orders. We got to fix those unconstitutionally. That's the problem. So, a Bernie Sanders, a Biden gets in. What legal steps do you have on to hold them, bind them to the Constitution? You don't. But this is where it's important. This is the hypocrisy we had. And before the Democrats took over the House, Republicans had the House for years. They could have defunded Article 1, Section 7, Clause 1. Every single bill must start in the House. So anything you want to defund from Obamacare to abortion. Just think about it. Republicans have funded Planned Parenthood since they've been in charge.
Sure.
Okay, that's the hypocrisy, Bill. They can write line item and say, we're not funding this. If they just funded the things in Article 1, Section 8, this is a moot point.
It almost makes me think that they're in it for themselves.
Well, look at Tillis, man.
They both want to placate as many people as possible, regardless if they are Planned Parenthood or the pro-life group.
I can't agree more. The pro-life group, I'm in pro-life OBGYN. They had a big rally this week. There are people in the House, in the General Assembly who went and spoke there. We got to do something. Here's my question with abortion. What is their plan? Their plan is to rally to raise money so they can run again and they're in office. What are they doing?
Right.
See, what are they doing? I wrote a paper on this. I ran for your Senate upon this. I gave this paper to Senator Paul, Senator Lee. Senator Lee said, Greg, I need you to run. We could win it. We can get rid of abortion constitutionally. They complain when they have the power to say anything in Article 1, Section 8 will not fund it. There's no abortion. No judge can make a decision. So abortion can be done in North Carolina tomorrow. Not with Cooper. But when we had the Assembly, Republicans had the Assembly. They had the governor, the Supreme Court.
Yes.
They could have simply said, like Georgia did, I was Georgia did good at heartbeat law.
Yes, they
I didn't
did.
even go conception law, but they could do it because in Article 1, Section 8, there's no abortion. James Iredell, North Carolina, 1788, who was at the convention in Philadelphia, at the convention in North Carolina, to convince North Carolinians to actually join. And this is important. North Carolinians were the first ones to join the Union when it was the Articles of Confederation. Okay? We were the 12th to join, and we said no the first time when it was a new Constitution.
Right.
Because they were worried about people using applied powers in these words. So James Iredell was trying to convince North Carolinians that will never happen. And he was actually applied in the first Supreme Court by George Washington. He said this at the Hillsborough Convention, June of 1788. He says, if the Congress should ever pass a law, abortion, Obamacare, amnesty, keep going on the list.
Medicare,
Social Security,
Medicaid.
If they ever pass a law that's not enumerated in the Constitution, it is null and void. Archibald MacLean said, if they do that, we will make them pay. Okay, that was what the passion was in North Carolina, and now we have Burrs and Tillis as representatives. We have Republicans, conservatives, actually out there defending FDR's progressive agenda.
Yes, clearly.
And the New Deal and Great Society is defended by Trump, by Bush, by Burr, by Tillis. Defended. Because, we can control socialism a little bit better. That's what's frustrating me. That's why I believe now believe me, we have a Bernie in there or OAC. Then it's pure communism. I understand that. But the part about it is all these great plans they have exempt themselves. Our representatives have a different pension plan than us. Our representatives have it never goes down.
No, look at Bernie. Look at Bernie. He's getting the super delegates now.
Yep.
But he's a millionaire. He owns 3 homes. That's not what a socialist will do. Well, the elite socialist will have.
Oh, yeah. Socialism and communism.
There's always going to be the elite.
Socialism and communism are great for the plebes. The elites exempt themselves. And that's the hypocrisy about this bill is on paper, we have a constitution that binds the Bernies, the Tillises, the Obamas, all of them. The problem is we have this royalty here now. We have this royalty. There's no royalty in America. In Article 1, Section 9, it says it. But yet we have all this. A friend of mine the other day was saying he flew into an airport, Jackson Hole, and he had to be delayed to land because Cheney was flying out. Now,
why?
That's the problem. Is I'm not saying knocking that, but the thing is, we should not have royalty. That's the whole. So I'm going to hold this to path because again, we're using the example. Bill, is the Constitution followed line by line? No, because what happens is you get a Supreme Court, and again, in the Constitution, there's no particular number of judges that must be. In the Constitution, the Supreme Court has no power to enforce their opinion, to fund their opinion, or write law.
North Carolina schools say they are the final arbiter. They decide what the Constitution says. Public schools, I dare say probably all of them, but certainly in North Carolina, that's what they teach our children.
Because the progressives of the Woodrow Wilson area, the Teddy Roosevelt area, they knew they had to take over healthcare, education, the Wall Street, the central banks, the foreign policy. They took over the reins of this government. That's the sad part. Adam said again, a moral and virtuous people is necessary for a republic. We're not that, Bill, anymore. So that's why I'm saying is
Do you know how many people work for the federal government? It was just in the news. Almost 18 million people work for the federal government. That would suggest it's a rather large entity to me. And maybe a tad too big.
Yeah, and Madison said, "Hey, we shouldn't pay these people because they're only going to work like 3 months a year." Okay,
all right. They're looking for a raise.
Yeah, well, go try to buy real estate values in D.C. You can't.
No.
So again, the federal government produces zero income. They take it by force. That's why it's important, Bill, that the states stand up. And that's what bothers me. That's what bothers me with the Republican Party and the party since my whole life. I hate the pronouns, but the Republican Party, if they did what they said, They could have checked the because if the Democrats were in power when they are, they do everything. They never compromise on their principles. Their principles, they hate republicanism. They hate the individual. They love the collective, that everybody is equally miserable except themselves.
They take the general welfare clause to the nth degree. But the Republicans have been doing this going all the way back. I mean, our societal norms have changed. Right? Even for Republicans, they've changed because they've been educated in the public system. But even way back then,
way back,
they didn't do it.
The Republican establishment and the Democratic establishment are on the same team. They're progressives, period. Again, an example, my friend Matt Bevin is not being, we're going to talk later on how the Republican establishment uses the primaries to rig it for them. And we'll talk about that. This Sandy Smith and Tucker and Tillis, the whole idea how it's worked, because they want to conquer the divide. So we'll go over that next segment. But Bill, I mean, Matt Bevin, he said he's going to do his end, cut taxes, help Social Security, help the welfare, all constitutionally, also all free market. He has four candidates, and in that state, just whoever gets the most votes wins. So it's not going to be like a rigged system. But he's getting 4 Republican establishment guys against him.
Sure.
So the thing about this bill is very simple: is nothing's going to change, nothing, until individuals say no more.
And when is that going to happen? When it falls apart.
When it falls apart, when chaos occurs.
Because it will.
Eventually.
Just as surely as Venezuela is.
History has shown us that these powers don't last forever. And it shows them how they fall apart. It's first the bread and circuses. It's the taxing to a part of you can't survive anymore. Yes, on paper, there's a good economy, and I understand that, but really it doesn't. We have 98% of us are in debt. Most of us don't have $1,000 in the bank account. All these kind of things.
There was an article where Congress is actually looking for a raise because they can't afford to live in D.C. Well, this is true of all these progressive-run cities. Their regulations, their zoning, their green spaces, their smart growth drive the cost of housing. So it's only affordable to the elite, and the small. People like me and you, well, you're not so small, but I'm small.
I'm small.
Well, you're small. But I mean, we become more dependent, I think, on government. This is just my own stupid thought, because all of a sudden, we're not in a free market. It is cronyism. The elite are controlling everything. We're working 5 months a year to pay the taxes. There's not enough left to feed the family. There's not enough left to have a house. And so you're seeing more and more Americans giving up their freedom, giving up their liberty, because they're afraid.
Yes.
Would you agree?
100%.
Quickly, if you were to boil down the Constitution, I was reading somewhere, and some guy did it. He might be completely wrong, but he said, in the simplest of terms, he said this. See if you agree. It comes down to these two things: mind your own business, and number 2, keep your hands to yourself.
100%.
That's it.
That's it.
And why is that so difficult to understand?
Because these politicians will have no power and no richness if they follow the Constitution.
I have noticed people like Senator Burr and Senator Tillis,
look at their net worth increase,
on a very small income, tend to make a lot of money up in Washington. And I make less and less every year. It's crazy. All right. Well, I know this is old ground, but it's new. It's new in the sense that at least it's time to recognize the state of the union, and it's not good. It's not good. We're visiting with Dr. Greg Brannon. Of course, your American Experiment is brought to you by Metagenics. And Doctor, this is good stuff. This is all natural stuff. It goes into your body to keep you healthy. And when you have problems, it also naturally takes care of it.
Yeah, vitamins are not an option. Coenzymes are not an option. Cofactors are not an option. Do yourself a favor. Take responsibility for your health, your life, your freedom. Please. You cannot take care of yourself or your family if you're weak and sick. And being on 6 or 7 medications is not the definition of health. Metagenics, I looked at the most natural, vegetable-based product I can have for B's, for D's, for C's, coenzyme Q10. All these things are there. It's just there's hundreds of products. They have a great protein powder. They have just great supplementation. It's just please go to Metagenics. The code word is BHRT. Carry BHRT is our code, and look at the list. But please I want you to do your research. Don't listen to me per se. I hope it opens your eyes to go to the website and check it out.
Promise you, he's already done a lot of research. So go to the website. We'll be back with your American Experiment. We're back, second half. Your American Experiment, brought to you by the Youth Institute and Metagenics with Dr. Craig Brannon. I'm Bill LeMay, and as always, Doctor, it's great to have you here. And I learn so much every time I get together with you, and I hope that the people that are watching and listening will spread the word, because it's without them, this is not going to be around in the future. You know what? You should run again. I understand there are people out there who would really like to see like Tom Tillis go. I'm hearing calls for Burr to go. People in Congress in some congressional districts, was it District 3? Mm-hmm. They anyway, your name continually comes up. And I keep saying, well, you had your chance in North Carolina. You kind of screwed it up, and you voted for practical constitutionalist Tom Tillis.
Yeah, practical.
But let's talk about this. We're talking about the Constitution instead. It would seem to me that people who want freedom and liberty would probably gravitate to someone like you, who actually holds the Constitution with great respect.
Well, the future is, you never know what's going to happen, number one. Number two, we did that with Tom. And again, understand this, Bill, is it's not just me running, but it's the thing about this, Bill, because but Greg, you just hammered government. Yeah, I hammered the people within the government. When I was on Mr. Beck's show, he said, but Greg, it's failed. I go, no, sir, it has not. The structure is beautiful. Our republic is fantastic. If we have men and women of honor who did their words, and if the men and women making these decisions had no access to money, none, zero, they could not have the printing press of the Federal Reserve. They could not force taxes on us the way the Constitution is. Mm-hmm. They'd have to just do their job, Bill.
It would be but in all honesty, you would have to agree that maybe we were a virtuous, honest group of people when we began this country. But even people like John Adams and others early on tried to find the loopholes. So it's part of our nature.
I don't believe we were virtuous at the beginning, more so or less so than today. I believe Scripture's clear. Human beings want to destroy other human beings. Okay, that's all you need, a savior. Okay.
All right.
But they were wise enough in that room to put it on a piece of paper.
They were realists. They understood.
Okay. So they had a contract. So back to the preamble of the Bill of Rights. Remember, the preamble of Bill of Rights says, so there'll be no future mistakes, nothing in the future. We're writing these restrictive declaratory statements to restrict who? Not Bill or Mary or Bob. No. To restrict them, the government. So when I hammered Tillis on that debate in the Second Amendment, shall not infringe, I go, what part do you miss? I don't care, but what he says, talking about, what about this? What about that? Guy goes, Tom, it's irrelevant what about, because you have no function if you became the honor of being our ambassador. United States Senate has no power to infringe on the Second Amendment. Yet Burr, when he was there, voted actually literally in cloture to bring the First Amendment up to vote and debate on the Senate floor. He literally voted for that.
Now they're talking about, of course, freedom of speech. Another big one, forget about due process, because they can just take you away and kill you in the middle of the night now. It is really quite frightening just how unfree we are, and our liberty is when we don't have
That's the worst type of serfdom. That's the worst type, to believe you're free when you're not.
It's an illusion.
It's an illusion, Bill.
We're afraid. We're frightened. We're worried. We're almost illiterate.
Well, look at President Trump now. You have everybody running for any office. I will back Trump, or you have Tillis saying, I back him this percentage or that percentage, da.
That should be a measurement.
Yeah, no, I want to go back to the brilliant Wake County Republicans who are supposed to stay out of primaries, okay? And when I'm talking Republican, I'm talking the establishment. I remember when I was running.
That was sarcasm.
Yeah, and when I was running in 16, so every candidate goes to these county conventions, and you give a couple-minute talk. And so it was a presidential year, so they had people come up and speak for their candidates.
Right.
And you had most of the established Republicans come up and talk for Marco Rubio. That's our man. Yeah. Spy on him, blow the world up.
That was a scam, wasn't
That's
it?
our guy, right?
I remember that.
Yeah, okay. So it happened to be this lovely lady. I'm not going to mention her name, but I happened to be actually her doctor, delivered her child. And she went up there and she goes, I'm for Trump. She got booed. Yeah,
that's your Wake County Republican Party.
Now, and she just said the truth. Candidate Trump said, let's close our borders. Let's get out of Afghanistan. Questioning vaccines.
The candidate was awesome.
Audit the Fed. All those things that Rand talked about, Ron talked about, and Trump talked about, right? So she gets up there. I mean, literally, here's this citizen activist, not a party person, a citizen activist. And look at the change that happened. Many of them voted for President Trump, right?
Right.
So that's why I'm optimistic. Okay. Even though when I hammer President Trump on the non-constitutional functions, that's all. That's all I'm saying. Another stuff is, but I'm saying is now the GOP is, whoa, you didn't back Trump in 16. Well, none of you did. All you hypocrites.
Right.
The king is dead. The king is dead. Long live the king. That shows that you guys have no huevos because the king and queen are in the mirror. And that lovely lady went up there with those people ooh, and laughing at her.
Nobody watching or listening to you right now.
Mm-hmm.
No, I won't say nobody because surely there's some, but the vast majority of Americans don't believe they're a king or a queen. They don't believe they have any power. They've been told they don't have any power. Isn't that true?
100%.
I mean, if you actually believed that you were, in fact, the king and queen and everyone in your family, in your neighborhood, in this country, maybe things would be a little different.
Okay, I'm here to preach about those who need to believe or not. On a secular document called the Declaration of Independence, and I'm going to ask you people, do yourself a favor. July 4th, 1821, on the 45th anniversary of our country, John Quincy Adams gave a speech on the Declaration of Independence. And it was, what has America given mankind? Please read it. It's mind-boggling. Now, back up a little. And that was, and again, he was informal ambassador to Russia when he's 14 years of age. He spoke 6 languages. He was Secretary of State. He was president. After he's president, he was a congressman. He died in Congress. Had a heart attack on the floor. Okay? This man did it all. Some things I'm not happy with, some things he would. But overall, he saw it all. And read what he said about that. But all that being said is this. This secular document says that we hold these truths to be self-evident. And I know I repeat this a bazillion times, but 5 men wrote the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson's handwriting, mainly his words, but John Adams and Ben Franklin, you see their hands and their notes in the original draft. It was Franklin who crossed and put in the word self-evident. He didn't have to debate. It was, we are endowed by our Creator. That's what we understand. Oh. Not government. Certain inalienable rights. Among those, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Among those. So if we're endowed and made the Creator's image, by definition, you're a king and queen.
Which is why, when you know this, you understand the battle that has been going on to eliminate God from all the public squares and to demean individuals who have this belief system in the United States.
But that's why, Bill, when you have a Creator, that's why you defend life. I defend my opponents who believe in nothing because they have the right. They're made in the Creator's image. The baby in the womb is in the Creator's image. The 85-year-old who has a kidney transplant needs in the image. That's why all life is valuable. And once you have an AOC walk around and say, hey, you live enough at 70, you're enough. See, that's the problem. The state
replace God.
Replace God. There's a great Twilight Zone, and the actor's name was Weaver, and the state Burgess Meredith played the bookworm. I don't know if you remember that one.
I do remember.
He read
that.
all these books, right?
Yes.
And the state said he's obsolete. He's done. He's too old. So the state employee, the Tillis of the guys, the detectocrat,
right.
He said, you have to get in front of the state board and defend why you should exist. Okay? Boom, 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 boom.
That doesn't sound so
yes.
far-fetched.
And he goes, you know what? I'm not defending, bottom line, I'm going to go. So his sentence was death. Well, the state technocrat could not defend why he should exist, but he's all cocky there. And so he went for the final minutes into, he brought the bomb to actually say time to, you have to go. He was going to leave the door, but Burgess locked the door and said, stay in this place. You just seen him begging the state to leave. So the thing about it is there's a belief system, not a belief system, but to defend your right to exist was a TV show from Rod Steiger back then. Now it's like we really have to defend our life in the womb. There's nobody in the womb to defend that. Or there's nobody with little babies to defend that. Or an older person with death panels going to defend that. But we've compromised life so far, we shouldn't have to be defending that. That should be a given because it was self-evident. So the answer is yes, Bill, we're not. We believe we're actually plebes and we got to bend at the knee. That's why I'm tired of this elitist royalty. We ran away from royalty. The president is a servant to the people via the Constitution. The Congress is the servant to they give oath to that, not to other lobbyists. Look at Tom. The people that elected him, he's done wonderful to. Solar energy, amnesty, toll roads, everybody that elected him, big pharma, he's been great to them.
Right.
But the people of North Carolina, who are they?
Well, there's a guy who's going to run against him. I saw that, in fact, instead of, I guess he's a credible candidate, they called him a serious candidate. The first serious candidate is a Garland Tucker. I don't know anything about him. Honestly, I don't. I know he's a very successful individual, has a lot of money, which he's probably going to need if he's going up against the establishment guy. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, let's back off on number one. You first off is there's another person in the race. I think her name is Miss Smith, Sandy Smith.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Her husband is a solar energy lobbyist.
Uh-huh.
Same people supports Tom. And I'm going to go through this. I don't know what's going on here, but we know the plan. We know the structure once the establishment do it. In my race, I was not a credible opponent against Tom until I was kicking his rear end into the polls. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly I was credible. So how do I know I was credible? Because other people got in the race. They put Pastor Harrison in the race. They put 7-8 people in the race. And they lowered the standard to win the primary from 50 to 40. Mm-hmm. Now listen, what's funny, really funny. With all of that, we missed a runoff by 3 or 4 points.
Right.
So this time, the General Assembly, the great Republicans, they knocked it. Tom only needs 30%. So when I ran against Burr, I was credible against Tillis. I was so credible, Tom had to help other people get in the race for he wins. But 2 years later, I wasn't credible enough for Senator Burr to debate me.
Right.
Did he watch me debate Tom? And the cockiness is, I wouldn't worry about you because they can't have that field. They should always be debating. So now
who are these Republicans in the state or in Wake County, anywhere, that would, I guess, be so supportive of somebody like a Tom Tillis who has few very wealthy friends?
But look at the
why?
people. But look at the people that are against him in the primary. Then suddenly they're for him after he wins. Because I had leaders in the General Assembly that come to me, Greg, when you beat Tom, I'll be there for you.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
brave
dude,
soul.
you gutless human being.
Yeah.
You know, because they're worried about repercussions. That's why we're not.
So it is all about me.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
It's all about me.
So this other person, I mean, obviously Tom should go. There's no doubt about
Garland
that.
Tucker, good guy. Do you know?
I don't know him. I don't know him. I read his book on more of a conservative than a constitutionalist.
Right. But we know conservatives can be just as, shall we say, carefree with the Constitution as progressives.
I hope not. If I have a chance, I'll talk to him down the line.
I hope not either.
My thing is, Tom has proven he should be removed. Period.
Tom should just run.
Tom is
just get it over with, doctor, and just run.
The problem is, then I'm playing into their game. Then we're debating that stuff. And now, don't forget, now it's only Tom. I mean, Bill, I said 30% to win.
Well, you see the picture you're painting here now. You're painting a picture where the Constitution is dead. And I agree with you. I look at my soon-to-be 4-year-old, my heart breaks because her life in this country is going to be awful because of a progressive Republican and Democratic Party.
Let's look at this. 93% of incumbents win a race. Now, I'm going to show you. I'm a test example.
How is that even possible considering the approval rating of Congress?
That's what's amazing. Look at this. I'm a test example of this. I ran for an open seat for United States Senate. Okay, the Republican side.
Yes,
it was against Hagan. So an open seat. There's no incumbent. There's no nothing.
Right.
And then senators like Senator Paul and Senator Lee were open to endorse who they want in the primary. I went around, I'm a nobody. I went around just giving speeches. We built up. I gave the speech at this convention. At the convention in June of 13, it was just me and Tom in the race, and they saw the response we had. And again, I'm just the messenger of the message of liberty and freedom. Okay, I'm not the articulate one. Next thing you know, Robin Hayes, the indicted one, puts Harris in the race. Come on now. It's not to divide Tom's vote.
No,
it was to divide the anti-establishment vote, and they did that so much. They had to put so many candidates in there because they know Tom can barely get over the hump. Now against Burr goes, well, hey, you may have debated Tom, but I'm too important to debate you.
Right.
Wait, I was just endorsed by Senator Lee, by Senator Paul, by Mark Levin, by Coulter, by Ingram.
You were embraced
by
Glenn
Breitbart,
Beck, who's a pretty
by Red
powerful
State. Yeah, so
media
18
person.
months later, I sure was a credible opponent enough that Tom spent, I think, $14-15 million in the primary against our million. Okay,
right.
And he barely streaked over. Now Burr is the head of the Intelligence Committee.
Right.
That's scary. Okay. So, and this is the thing about it is they won't. So when I hear the word credible, nothing against Mr. Tucker, but anybody who runs should be credible because they ran. They have the guts to put their name out, the guts to put their private life out there, and we will. But the incumbent has a decision to do this. Now, I do believe some people in the race are not at certain points in the race. You may see what the polling is like. Like in my poll, I was like 36%, Tom was like 31%, and Harris was like 6 or 7, and the other lady was like 2. At that point, maybe they could debate themselves, have another debate, but the two leaders, because we were only a week away from the election, they were not going to win. It was between me and him. But no, they have to debate this. And that's the thing. So you say, Greg, it ain't going to change. And I'm sort of like a hypocrite because back to our idea, our system is perfect. But they play us like a violin. They know what they're going to do. They know they're going to, at the end of the day, those people say, never Tom. If Tom wins again, they will run him against, they'll support him, not just run, they'll support him against any Democrat because he's better than that. And that's the problem.
And that's the system that's been created by Democrats and Republicans alike. For that very reason, nothing changes in Washington. It may speed up, may slow down. Or Raleigh.
Okay.
Or even a county.
Okay. Because these county officials, I mean, how many people have this? Again, they want to know, they want to bend the knee to the person, quote unquote, above them. You know, Tom should bend his knee when it comes to us and apologize for his lack of breaking the constitutional oath. And the idea of saying, I'm going to compromise and cross aisles and I like making deals, that's not what leadership is. Leadership is to do the right thing all the time. And we have some men in our military who are those men, okay?
Yes.
Every day sacrificing their lives for men who have no guts to declare war. None. Zero. They tie their hands out there. Either declare war or come home. They have no guts. They can't. This is what's so frustrating about this bill is the Constitution literally changed the hands of the government and we do just the opposite. That's why I want the state. So back to the pro-life rally on Tuesday. Again, great event to try to do that. But there were men and women who spoke there who literally have the power in North Carolina to pass a bill to say no. Now, we don't have a governor sign it, but they did 2 years ago. So my question was, why for 6 years did North Carolina not have the guts Georgia just did to say life at least go to heartbeat, let alone conception? Why did they not do it? I want to hear those people that have these positions of power at the state and federal level. What is their plan to get rid of all unconstitutional lives and defend life? I mean,
maybe that's why they hate Trump so damn much. Because no more excuses, right? On the federal level, you go back, you've brought this up, this is what I've taken away from our discussions, is that even though the Great Society, Franklin FDR's big
New Deal and Great Society.
New Deal, right? The Republicans got control of everything with Eisenhower, right?
Yep.
They did nothing.
Yep.
You had the Great Society.
Yep.
With Lyndon B. Johnson.
Yep.
They took control again.
Yep.
Did nothing. And, of course, most recently, we had control, we being the Republicans, and we had Obamacare. They ran on it, and we did nothing.
The people that run on get rid of Obamacare, get rid of abortion, get rid of build the wall or build those superior borders, the ones who run on that, when they're there, do nothing.
Why do you suppose that is?
Because they're full of crap. They're full. All they are.
Well, I know they're full of crap. Are they? There's got to be some benefit. They perceive some benefit. Are they just purely afraid of a liberal coming up and yelling at them, or is there something more? I don't know what the answer is.
I think there's something more, Bill, because you could judge their fruit by their action, right? Not their words, not their words, and that's the problem about this. The Democrat progressives say, "I want one party payer. We're going to have one party health insurance, which means that the government will decide who gets what. That's going to come. One person will take care of all this.
Who gets to live and who gets to die.
But they're exempt.
Yes.
Okay, so again,
their family.
All the progressive movement stuff has moved to the left. The Republicans who said they're against that have helped it.
Yes.
Okay, that's the problem. You don't compromise with things that are unconstitutional or unfunctional, the foundational principles. Then if you compromise on foundational principles, then by definition, they're not foundational principles.
I'm trying to think of something as an analogy in your life. You know, we usually bring up the mortgage or whatever, any contract you've ever entered into, credit card, whatever it is. Imagine redefining the contract word by word and see how far you would get. And yet it's happened to the Constitution. I'm just, at times, I guess, I'm frustrated, but I also have to give them, I guess, the progressives, you got to give them props because they have been very patient and they have done all the things necessary to get to this point. And right now it looks like they're going to win.
But again, Bill, I was talking to a dear friend of mine, and we were talking about this the other day, and we were just talking about this idea, what's the answer? But it comes back down to you and I just saying no. I know this sounds crazy, but what if 90% of Americans did not vote? Okay, now understand, whoever has the 10% wins. I got that.
Right.
But what makes the government legitimate? What percentage of people voting makes it legitimate? And that's one side. But also what makes it legitimate is it legitimate if it breaks its own constitution? And then they can't run back and say, but the judge said this. That in Article 3, there's no power for that.
See, and that's what needs to be, well, that should be taught, obviously, but that's what needs to be understood by the vast majority of Americans who don't understand it. What is perceived by people who run radio stations, whom I know, teachers and the media in general, and our politicians, they don't realize what's actually in the Constitution.
Well, that's why I ran, Bill, based upon that, because it was objective data. It wasn't subjective. And I know the guys you're talking about. They're gutless human beings. They will never debate me. They'll never debate me on this or debate something else. They all they do is ad hominem attacks. They false Alinsky's plan to the T. You attack the human being. You never attack the message because they cannot answer the message.
Which is why they're destroying the Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, our founding fathers. They can't answer the question. So they destroy the man. And
racist.
How could you possibly?
Right. And that's why the people that are on the Democrat progressive side, Greg, why don't you bring them up? Well, Bernie's an easy. Biden's going to be their guy. Okay.
Yeah.
Or
pretty certain.
The best they have is this 78 and 80-year-old guy who had never had a job. Okay. That's.
But if he gets the super delegates,
I know.
He might be able to pull it.
And then they might get a young person on the vice president. But again, and then the best. And then what we have is over on this side, and again, I want to just these pronouns are gone. All I'm looking for is a man or woman who will honor their Constitution. Now, I understand that's not going to happen. I got it. But the revolution's happening. You can only produce so much. You can only produce so much that you're going to be allowed taking from you. Income's going to destroy. That's why they control the printing press. Candidate Trump wanted to audit the Fed. How about assign Ron Paul as a special agent to audit the Fed? Wow. He does that, he'll win. I think Trump's going to win in a landslide anyway.
I do too.
Okay, because again,
I think the American people see what's going on for what it really is, but you can see the fear and sense the fear from a Senator Burr as much as you
Why
can
did he
from
bring
a
up a
Schumer.
thing that's already been dead? Why is he bringing that up?
Well, to keep the story alive.
You know why? Because his election's not up.
Right.
If his term was up, he's probably retiring. But if his term was up, he was that close to being elected, he would never done this.
But there is a compadre between the Republicans and Democrat progressives to take this president down. And yeah, he has not been candidate Trump. How much of it is because of everything that's going on around him, I have no idea. But
that's why if you hold President Trump to the Constitution, that's great.
But people have to do that.
Yes.
Not Nancy Pelosi, not Senator Burr. No. I do, you do, everyone does.
But we hold our officials at the state level to that, but we don't.
No, we don't.
Okay.
We're just not smart enough.
And who wins these elections? Incumbents or the one with the most money?
And everybody hates all of them.
That's
I guess except your guy. I guess your guy. And that's because we just simply don't know. It's very frustrating. It's very scary. But we'll be back tomorrow, or next Sunday. Your American Experiment brought to you by the Life Institute. We all grow older. We can't stop it, although, there are things you can do to make that growing older a heck of a lot better. They're talking about living to 100 now. I just read that in the news. I'm not quite 100, but I know that with Dr. Greg Brannon and the Youth Institute and bioidentical hormone replacement, whether you're a man or a woman, will make you healthier. It will also make you feel young again and think young again. For me, it was... sometimes I would forget the next question when I was doing a talk show. The clarity of mind is just amazing. All I can do is urge you to go to the website. And if you haven't thought about it, think about it. If you're someone who's tired and just feeling your age, I promise you, you're going to feel so much younger. So go to the website. All the information is there, and get in for a consult with Dr. Greg Brannon. And he'll answer all your questions. Your website is youthinstitutebhrt.com. Youthinstitutebhrt.com. And we're out of time, Doctor. You should run. Did I bring that up earlier? You should think about it. Don't answer yet. Don't answer yet. We'll be back next Sunday. Your American Experiment. Thanks, Doc.
Thanks, guys.